Is this Ravens win? You're a Bengals homer. I'm a Steelers homer. The best win of the season for any team, given the timing, the fact that it was on the road, and the playoff implications.
Yes. This was one of those. I think all of us probably picked the 49ers straight up, but thought it was going to be a close game. But this was one of those where I don't think a lot of people thought the Ravens were going to win, let alone win by 2 touchdowns. I mean, they destroyed them. This was a curb stomping. They dominated the game. Brock Purdy was seeing ghosts. This guy's supposed to be an MVP candidate. He get 2 interceptions in. He looked like he had no idea what was going on anymore. Granted, all 4 of those interceptions weren't his fault, but the fact that he threw 4 interceptions just tells you that the Ravens defense was everywhere. And when you think about all the weapons the 49ers have, and can anyone slow them down? Can anyone stop them? And the Ravens proved that, yes, you can. And also that sometimes you have a defense that is one of the top 10 in the NFL based on yards given up and points per game because they play an easier schedule. Not the Ravens. I mean, they proved that their defense is legit. We already know their offense is for real. So to me, this team feels like the Super Bowl favorite. Brenton, you think so?
Yeah, I think what's pretty notable is that if you take the biggest NFC wins of the season from Baltimore and San Francisco like drubbed the Eagles, smoked the Cowboys, and then you also have Baltimore who goes and destroys Seattle, destroys Detroit at home, and then goes on the road and beats San Francisco. And what, just because of how San Francisco has been playing, the only 3 losses are when Debo and Trent Williams are out. They are rolling. Brock Purdy is like minus 190 to win the MVP. And this line opened at 5 and climbed up to 6.5 before the game kicked off. But like San Francisco was nearly a touchdown favorite against a number 1 seed in the AFC. And while it took Baltimore a little ways to pull away here, they needed 2 quick scores in the third quarter to really turn this into a blowout. I thought it was very clear from the beginning that Baltimore felt disrespected by the national perception of what was going to happen in this game, the belief that the 49ers were going to roll. And, they did it with their defense. They flew around the field. Those linebackers are so good. And I think it's like you watch the way the scheme and how they bring pressure and how they get pressure on Brock Purdy and how they generate it with these the false, they're not false fronts, I guess is a fair word, where they it looks like they're bringing 8 guys and they drop back. And then you have these linebackers who, when we think about Kyle Shanahan's offense, and this is sort of the reason I like the Ravens against the spread, but Kyle Shanahan constantly has these guys over the middle running wide open, getting yak. Well, the Ravens were able to get pressure on Brock Purdy or get their hands up and tip balls, and the linebackers were sort of eliminating a lot of that free space. And Baltimore is just a very complete team. They lost Mark Andrews, but it was a situation where Lamar Jackson only had to run 7 times. I think if the game had been closer, he has a bigger game, and people are really talking about him as an MVP favorite. And Baltimore has flown under the radar about as much as you can as a 1 seed in the AFC because of the struggles with the Chiefs, the struggles with the Bills, the Dolphins and all their big performances. All these different storylines in the AFC have sort of allowed Baltimore to just plug along, pile up wins. And I think they're as good and a complete as a team as San Francisco is on the other side, and they just smoked the 1 seed in the NFC.
I would say, and I'm going to use your own words against you. That's our Super Bowl pool. The Ravens were the number 2 pick. I mean, we knew that the Ravens were a good team. I think we also probably agreed. Well, yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that I don't know if they're flying. Like, people knew they were good.
Well, they're not flying under. I just feel like nobody. At no point has anybody gotten really excited for the Ravens this year. You know what I mean?
But I would say that no one ever in the history of the Baltimore Ravens have gotten excited about the Ravens.
Well, and just to that point, I will say, like, my hesitation with them all year has been in my preseason picks. I had them in the AFC title game, but my hesitation with them is still the same, which is what's going to happen when they get to the playoffs, because they have this history of falling flat on their face in the playoffs. And so
does this game make you feel better about that, though, on the road?
I mean, it makes me feel a little better, but it's still not a playoff game. But also, Lamar Jackson has a 20-1 record against NFC teams. He just absolutely destroys them because they have no idea what they're up against because they only see him once every 4 years. And so, yes, obviously huge win. And like I said, I think the Ravens are the Super Bowl favorite, but you just look at their playoff track record, 1-4 with Lamar. So that is where you worry a little bit.
Breach, do you think that this, and this is sort of where I'm at, but I'm curious.
1-3 with Lamar. Sorry.
I'm curious what you guys think about this, but do you think that this Ravens team with this version of Lamar, and this version of Lamar is very different than 2019 Lamar, and I mean that in complimentary to both versions. Lamar in 2019 is just like nuke bombing the entire like NFL with this rushing attack a la what he did in Louisville. This version is almost like more subdued, but in a good way. He's more of a pocket passer. And I do think that they were really going to start using his legs more in December when he's fully healthy versus with the Greg Roman offenses of the last few years where they used his legs in September and he was hurt late in the season. I think, I don't know, that this version should scare opposing defenses more, given how late in the season they're activating his legs and how much better of a passer he's shown to be. We all knew he was a great passer, but like in pocket passer now, you know what I mean?
No, I agree with that. And I think that sort of to follow up on your point, he does feel calmer in the pocket. He's not looking to run. And I think in sort of the history of the Ravens that you're talking about with Lamar, Breach, it's been one where franticness, to make up a word, seems to take over, and then mistakes are made. And those mistakes are actually made by the other guy playing quarterback, which we typically don't see from Brock Purdy either. But let me ask you this, Breach, since you're sort of on the bus, but you still have 1 foot off the bus, and the bus is getting ready to leave Ravens Station here. So the Ravens' last loss came in Week 10 to the Browns. And the 49ers had that 3-game losing streak when everyone was hurt and Purdy had the concussion, started the Browns game in bad weather, then the Vikings game, the 0 blitz at halftime, yada, yada, yada. And then your Bengals were just coming back with Joe Burrow and looked to be the part. And they played lights out since then. I feel like sort of to support what Brenson's saying here, there aren't any recent losses you can point to like, oh, see, this is why I have the concerns about the Ravens. Even the Lions should be like, okay, look, these guys play hard for 45 minutes and 15 minutes every Sunday. They're going to give up 40 points, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens are blowing everyone out. I think they've had the lead at the 2-minute warning in every single game this season. They are through 16 games. Only the 2007 Patriots and 1972 Dolphins have also done that. So we're talking about they are in a club with the only 2 teams that went undefeated in NFL history. And they're dominating. They're winning a lot of their games by double digits. We saw them beat the Bengals by double digits in the Thursday night game. They beat the Chargers by double digits when Justin Herbert was still out there. They beat the Jacksonville by double digits. So they're manhandling teams. I mean, they destroyed the Lions, destroyed the 49ers. It is, and you mentioned the Browns loss. Is that something that could happen? I mean, imagine if Joe Flacco went into Baltimore and beat the Ravens. That would be.
What if we get Jared Goff or Matthew Stafford and Joe Flacco versus the Ravens in the second round of the playoffs? Hey, just real quickly on that too, like the law. Wilson, I swear, I may have mentioned this already. I thought it was you and me doing HQ when someone asked us, what do we make, or like the podcast, and someone was like, what do you make of the Ravens coughing up these big leads? And it's like, I don't have an answer. Maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was somebody asked me that. I was like, I don't really have an answer. And I think they have 3 losses this season. Their 3 losses are by a total of 12 points.
I was going to say, I don't feel like they've coughed up a ton of lead. I know there's some pushback about Harbaugh late game, and then the fourth quarter they would have some wheels fall off. Yeah.
Well, in after week 5, when you may recall when the Steelers were doing the Magic Beans thing,
remember that game?
They got to the Ravens. The Ravens were 3-2, lost by 3 to the Colts and lost by 7 to the Steelers. And remember, it was that crazy. Like it was hard to explain how they were losing and how
they lost that Steelers game because Zay Flowers dropped 40 passes. Then Joey Porter Jr. caught a red zone, an end zone touchdown.
Yeah. I'm just, and Pickett had the big touchdown too, right? I'm just saying the narrative was, oh, this Ravens team can't hold a lead. But they've lost 1 game since then.
I'll say this: that game.
But then the game they did lose was blowing a 2-touchdown lead to the Browns, who.
Right, but I guess this is my larger point: is when we couldn't understand how the Ravens weren't holding on to these leads. But to Breach's point, Wilson's point, they've had a lead 90% of the time this season, over 90%. I think the last team to do that was the 2007 Patriots, if I'm not wrong, and maybe even a team. I mean, it was the 2005 Colts, I think, who had a lead like but anyway, 90% of the time they're leading. So eventually, if you're going to lose, like you're just going to be victim of bad luck. And I think that just might be what it is. This is just a really, really good football team.